I recently came across a question online about God. Does God have the same chemical and biological makeup that humans do? Questions similar to this about God are, does God look like us? Or does God look like an old man with a long white beard? I am Dave Chambers, the pastor of Manistee Bible Church. Today's Everlasting Truth question addresses the appearance of God, but it also considers some deeper questions about the nature of God. The biggest reason many people think God has a human form comes from the Bible. Genesis 1 says that God made man in his own image. The logical conclusion then is that since man is created in God's image, then God must look something like a human. However, I believe the image of God that he put into man is not found in our physical appearance. Why would I reject the obvious explanation? The biggest reason I do not believe that man's physical appearance is like God's is because God is not a physical being. John 4:24 says that God is a spirit. A spirit does not have a physical form like you and I do. A spirit does not have chemical and biological structures. A spirit may not have a permanently definable form. For example, the angels are spiritual beings, and some of them are described in the Bible as basically man-like in appearance, but some of them really cannot be said to have the appearance of the man. Some of them are described as having 4 heads, with each head of a different animal. And God is a spirit, not defined by a physical appearance. The Bible never describes what God looks like. Scripture describes the throne room of God and the angels around the throne of God, but never God himself. Scripture describes Jesus in his glorified humanity, but never God in his glorious deity. And because the Bible does not tell us what God looks like, we need to be cautious in saying that God looks like a human. It is not man's physical form that reflects the image of God, but man's nature. Man is also a spiritual being with intellect, will, the ability to choose right from wrong, and the ability to have a relationship with God. These features of humanity are the image of God that he put into man. No other creature has the ability to make moral choices or to know himself. No other creature is able to worship. Only man, made in the image of God, can do these things. If man does not look like God, then why does the Bible describe God as having hands and eyes? These kinds of descriptions are called anthropomorphisms. That is, they are literary devices intending to describe something using vivid and human imagery. A bridge may be described as a majestic lady whose arms span the river and whose hands tightly grasp the shore. It's a poetic description, not literal. Likewise, God does not have literal arms or eyes any more than he has chicken wings or rides the clouds like a chariot, both descriptions also given of God in the Bible. All of these images help us understand the power of God, the wisdom of God, the compassion of God, the knowledge of God, and the justice of God. But they are not intended to tell us what God looks like. God is far greater than humanity. He is so much greater than mankind that we cannot compare ourselves to him. In the book of Isaiah, God asks, "To whom will you liken me?" We cannot imagine that God is at all like man or like any other created thing. God is utterly unique and ultimately unfathomable to us. To compare God to man is ultimately to diminish him. God is not human, limited by the limits of humanity. He is not a superhuman or even a deified human. God is far above humanity, separate and distinct from, not a magnified man. To make God like us, to make him what we think he should be, is in fact idolatry, because what we do is create a God in our own image. To quote theologian Roger Olson, God is not an American. God is not white. God is not male. God is not a capitalist. God is not a consumer. God is not literally father or mother. God is not black. God is not female. God is not a radical revolutionary. God is not an Englishman or a German or any other human nationality. God is not a big man with a beard and crown glaring down on his creation. God is not my co-pilot or CEO or business partner. Roger Olson nails it. God is not like man. God placed his likeness in us. We reflect God without diminishing him. We cannot project our ideas onto him. He does not reflect us, for if he did, that would make him less than he is. Likewise, God cannot be compared to any created thing, whether it be the sun, a mighty river, or a powerful beast. God is greater than all the universe. Everything that exists outside of God is a created thing. Everything is dependent on him and is limited in its nature. To compare God to anything, even the greatest creature that you can imagine, is to diminish God. The sun is a powerful incandescent nuclear furnace that gives warmth to the whole earth and fuels life on this planet. Yet to compare God to the sun makes him less than he is and takes away from his glory. God is light, and from God came the light which the sun has. To say the source of light is like the receiver of light is to make less of God, kind of like comparing the sun to a candle. God is glorious beyond our perception, and to compare his glory to the glory of the sun is to make God's glory dim. God is great beyond all things. In his wisdom, he created man in his own image. Anything good, anything moral or praiseworthy that man possesses has its source in God. As the source of all things, and as the author of all that is good, God deserves all our worship and devotion. He is worthy of our obedience and praise, so let us give God the glory that he deserves. Thank you for watching. If you have questions about God or the Bible, you can submit your questions at everlastingtruths.com. Tune in again next week for more answers to your questions.